The moment has passed. You are standing in the shower, or perhaps driving home in the silence of your car, and suddenly it hits you. The perfect line, the sharp retort, the brilliant insight that would have turned the tide of the negotiation or commanded the laughter of the room. It is perfect, it is devastatingly witty, and it is completely useless because the moment is gone. This is the haunting reality for most people. They live their lives on a delay. They are spectators in their own conversations, processing what was said only after the subject is changed. They feel the sting of an insult 5 seconds too late. They find the solution to a problem after the meeting has ended. They are intelligent, capable, and thoughtful, but they suffer from a fatal flaw in the modern world. They are slow. You are not listening to this because you lack intelligence. You are listening to this because you lack speed. We live in an era of acceleration. Information moves at the speed of light. Attention spans have shattered. In business, in romance, and in social conflict, the spoils do not go to the smartest person in the room. They go to the person who can deploy their intelligence the fastest. If you cannot articulate your value in the blink of an eye, you do not possess value. If you cannot defend your boundaries the moment they are crossed, you have no boundaries. There is a pervasive myth that wit is a genetic gift, that you are either born with a silver tongue or you are destined to stumble over your words forever. This is a lie. It is a comfortable lie told by people who are afraid to do the work. The truth is that a sharp mind is not a magical anomaly. It is a machine. And like any machine, it can be tuned, oiled, and modified for high performance. This audiobook is not a collection of canned jokes. It is not a list of clever comebacks to memorize for a rainy day. That is mimicry, not mastery. Instead, we are going to dismantle the way your brain processes reality. We are going to rewire the neural pathways between your ears to reduce latency. We're going to take the heavy, cluttered machinery of your current thinking patterns and strip it down to a Formula One engine. Over the next 10 chapters, we will journey from the internal biology of your brain to the external mechanics of charisma. You will learn to silence the inner critic that freezes your tongue. You will learn the algorithms of humor and the architecture of argument. You will learn to listen with a predatory focus, finding the ammunition for your reply hidden within the words of others. But before we begin this transformation, a small request. If you are finding value in this content and you are ready to commit to a sharper mind, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Premier Audiobooks. By doing so, you join a community dedicated to mastery, and you ensure you never miss the tools you need to win. If you have been watching until now, hit that subscribe button and let's continue this ascent together. The goal of this audio experience is not just to make you faster, it is to make you dangerous. A sharp mind is a weapon. It protects you from manipulation. It cuts through confusion. It commands respect without demanding it. By the time we finish, you will no longer be the person staring at the ceiling at night, replaying conversations and wishing you had said something else. You will be the person who said exactly what needed to be said, exactly when it needed to be said. The delay is over. The silence is broken. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The silence between the beats. How long is a second? In the objective world of physics, a second is a fixed unit of time. It is the tick of a clock. It is a heartbeat. It is negligible. But in the subjective world of human conversation, a second is an eternity. Imagine the scene. You are in a meeting or perhaps a dinner with friends. The energy is high. The banter is flying back and forth like a tennis ball in a championship match. Then the ball is hit to you. Someone asks you a pointed question, or perhaps they make a playful jab at your expense. The room goes quiet. All eyes shift to you. They are waiting for the return. 1 second passes. You are searching your mind for the file labeled Witty response. But the file drawer is jammed.
2 seconds pass. You feel a sudden spike in body temperature. Your heart rate climbs. You are not just looking for a response anymore. You are looking for a lifeline. 3 seconds pass. The silence has now taken on a physical weight. It is heavy, suffocating, and loud. The other people in the room are not looking at you with malice, but you interpret their gaze as pity. You can see them mentally moving on, categorizing you as someone who cannot keep up. Finally, you stammer out something bland, a weak agreement, a nervous laugh.
The moment dissolves. The conversation flows around you like water around a stone, and you are left behind. This phenomenon is what we call brain lag. It is the silence between the beats. And before we can fix it, we must understand that this silence is not empty. It is not a void. It is crowded with noise, fear, and biological mishandling of data. To think faster, you must stop treating this lag as a character flaw and start treating it as a mechanical inefficiency. You are not stupid. You are clogged. The biology of the blank mind. Let us dissect the anatomy of that freeze. When you are put on the spot, your brain perceives a threat. This is an evolutionary mismatch. To your ancient ancestors, a threat was a predator in the bushes. To your modern brain, a threat is a social expectation you might fail to meet. Despite the difference in stakes, the biological response is identical. The moment the spotlight hits you, your amygdala, the brain's fear center, hijacks the system. It screams, "Danger!" and floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. This is the fight-or-flight response. But there is a third option that we often forget: the freeze response. When an animal is cornered and cannot fight or flee, it plays dead. It shuts down unnecessary functions to survive. Tragically, when you are asked a difficult question, your brain decides that higher cognitive function and witty banter are unnecessary for immediate survival. Your prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain, responsible for logic, language, and planning, is temporarily taken offline. This is why you go blank. It is not that you have nothing to say, it is that your survival instinct has literally cut the phone line to the part of your brain that speaks.
You are trying to run high-level software on a computer that has just pulled its own power cord. The first step to thinking faster is recognizing this chemical wave. When you feel that heat rise in your chest, you must identify it not as incompetence, but as a biological false alarm. You are safe. No tiger is attacking you. You are simply talking. By labeling the sensation, you begin to dampen the amygdala scream, allowing the prefrontal cortex to come back online. The curse of the perfectionist. However, biology is only half the battle. The other half is architectural. Many people who suffer from slow thinking are actually highly intelligent. This seems paradoxical. Shouldn't a faster processor yield a faster result? In a computer, yes. In a human, not always. Intelligent people often suffer from what we might call the editor's delay. When a thought enters your mind, it does not go straight to your mouth. It passes through a series of internal checkpoints. You analyze the thought. Is it true? Is it funny? Is it offensive? Is it grammatically correct? Is it the best possible thing I could say? For the slow thinker, this internal editor is a tyrant. It rejects the first draft. It rejects the second draft. It demands a dissertation when a simple sentence would suffice. While you are internally editing your third draft to ensure it is poignant and philosophically sound, the conversation has moved on. The window of opportunity has closed. The person who spoke up, the one who everyone is laughing with, did not have a better thought than you. They simply had a lower threshold for release. They trusted their first draft. Speed requires a sacrifice. You must be willing to sacrifice perfection for the sake of momentum. A good enough response delivered instantly is infinitely more valuable than a perfect response delivered 10 seconds too late. In the economy of conversation, timing is the currency, not depth. We will work on raising the quality of your first drafts later in this book, but right now, you must understand that your filter is too tight. You are trying to push a boulder through a keyhole. The OODA loop of conversation. Military strategists and fighter pilots use a concept called the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. In a dogfight, the pilot who cycles through this loop faster wins. If you can observe the enemy, orient yourself to the situation, make a decision, and act before the enemy has even finished observing you, you become invisible. You strike from the future. Conversation is a dogfight. It is a constant cycle of OODA loops. Observe, you hear the words spoken to you. Orient, you understand the context, the tone, and the intent. Decide, you formulate a response. Act, you speak. The silence between the beats is a breakdown in the orient phase. Most slow thinkers get stuck trying to interpret the data. They overanalyze the hidden meaning behind a comment. Why did he say it like that? Is she making fun of me? What does this imply for my status? While you are stuck orienting yourself to the hidden subtext, the other person has already moved to their next OODA loop. You are fighting a war against a ghost because the reality has changed. To shorten the silence, we must streamline the orientation phase. We must stop looking for hidden traps and start reacting to surface-level data. This feels counterintuitive. We are taught that deep thinkers look beneath the surface.
But in the heat of verbal combat, the surface is where the traction is. You can analyze the deep psychological meaning later when you are journaling alone. In the moment, you need to react to the words as they are, not as you fear they might be. The heavy ram of modern life. There is a third factor contributing to your lag, one that is purely environmental: cognitive drag. Imagine your brain is a computer browser. You have 50 tabs open. One tab is worrying about your rent. Another is replaying an argument with your spouse. Another is tracking the notification you just got on your phone. Another is thinking about what you need to buy for dinner. Now, someone asks you a question that requires wit. You try to open a new tab to process this request, but your system is out of memory. The spinning wheel of death appears. You freeze. You cannot think fast if your RAM is full. We live in a state of constant, low-level cognitive exhaustion. We consume terabytes of useless information daily. We doom scroll through social media, filling our short-term memory with fragmented, emotionally charged, irrelevant data. This creates a static noise in the brain. When you try to summon a witty insight, that insight has to swim through a swamp of TikTok sounds, news headlines, and work anxiety. Friction creates heat, and heat slows down the engine. If you want a sharp mind, you have to clear the cache. This is why the most charismatic people often possess a strange kind of calmness. They are present. They are not multitasking mentally. Because they are not running background programs, all their processing power is available for the immediate moment. They have zero latency because they have zero distraction.
Reframing the void. So, how do we begin to close this gap? We start by reframing the silence itself. Right now, you fear the pause. You feel it as a loss of control. But consider the masters of communication, the great orators, the stand-up comedians, the powerful CEOs. They also pause. But when they pause, it does not feel awkward. It feels heavy. It feels intentional. The difference between an awkward silence and a pregnant pause is eye contact and composure. When you freeze, your eyes dart around. You look down, you shrink physically, you signal to the room, "I am panicking." The room picks up on your signal and feels uncomfortable for you. When a master pauses, they hold eye contact. They stay still. They signal to the room, "I am thinking, and what I am about to say is worth waiting for." The duration of the silence might be exactly the same, 3 seconds,
But the quality of the silence is diametrically opposed. One is the silence of the victim, the other is the silence of the predator. Your first actionable step in this journey, before we even learn a single technique for wit, is to change how you inhabit the silence. The next time you are asked a question and your mind goes blank, do not look down. Do not stammer. Do not make a noise to fill the gap like or ah. Instead, take a breath. Look the person in the eye. Allow the silence to exist. Own the gap. By refusing to panic, you send a signal to your own amygdala that there is no danger. This short-circuits the freeze response. It buys your prefrontal cortex the precious milliseconds it needs to reboot.
You will find that the answer comes, often just a second later, if you do not clog the channel with fear. The road ahead. We have diagnosed the problem. You are suffering from a combination of biological fight or flight, perfectionist filtering, and cognitive overload. You are running a high-performance machine with the emergency brake pulled up. In the chapters to come, we are going to release that brake. We are going to learn how to clear the static so your mind is a vacuum, ready to pull in new information. We are going to stock your mind with ammunition so you never have to search for a reference. We are going to practice the art of aggressive listening so you are already halfway to a response before the other person stops speaking. But for today, your takeaway is this. Speed is not about rushing. It is about removing resistance. You do not need to force your brain to run faster. You need to stop putting obstacles in its path. You need to kill the internal editor, calm the internal animal, and close the background tabs. The silence is not your enemy. It is the canvas. Stop fearing the blank space and prepare yourself to paint upon it. Chapter 2. Clearing the static. Imagine you are driving a high-performance sports car. It has a V12 engine. It has aerodynamic curves designed by the finest engineers in Italy. It is built for one thing: speed. Now imagine that before you take this car onto the racetrack, you fill the trunk with concrete blocks. You strap a mattress to the roof. You pour sand into the gas tank. You take it out to the starting line, slam your foot on the gas, and it crawls. It sputters.
It struggles to reach 60 miles per hour. You would not blame the engine. You would not say the car is broken. You would say the car is burdened. This is the state of your mind right now. You are walking into social interactions with a brain that is conceptually equivalent to that weighed-down sports car. You're frustrated that you cannot access your wit, your vocabulary, and your humor in real time, but you are asking your brain to perform high-velocity maneuvers while it is buried under a mountain of static, exhaustion, and chemical imbalance. You do not have a hardware problem. You have a maintenance problem. In this chapter, we are going to talk about cognitive drag. We are going to look at the invisible weights you carry around every single day, the digital noise, the nutritional trash, the unclosed loops that are slowing your processing speed down to a crawl. If Chapter 1 was about understanding the fear, Chapter 2 is about cleaning the machine. The fog of war. Military generals often speak of the fog of war. It is the confusion caused by chaos, lack of information, and the stress of the battlefield. When the fog is thick, mistakes are made. Decisions are slow. Most people live their entire lives in a fog of peace. This is that feeling you get at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. A dull pressure behind the eyes, a slight detachment from reality. Someone speaks to you and it feels like their voice is coming through a wall of cotton. You hear them, but the words don't snap into place. You have to manually drag the meaning out of the sound. This is brain fog, and it is the arch nemesis of wit. Wit requires electricity.
It requires a synapse to fire from point A, the comment, to point B, the joke, without resistance. Brain fog is resistance. It is insulation. It slows the electrical signal just enough that by the time the connection is made, the moment is gone. So where does this fog come from? It is not a mystery. It is a receipt. It is the bill coming due for how you treat your physiology. Let's be brutally honest. If you are sleeping 6 hours a night, fueling your body with processed sugar and hydrating with coffee instead of water, you have no right to expect a sharp mind. You are trying to run a supercomputer on a dying battery. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for witty banter and complex thought, is extremely energy expensive. It is the first thing your body shuts down when resources are low. When you are tired, your body prioritizes keeping your heart beating and your lungs breathing. Being funny is a luxury item. Your body cuts the budget for it immediately. If you want to think faster, you don't need a dictionary. You need 8 hours of sleep. You need to hydrate until your urine is clear. You need to stabilize your blood sugar so your brain isn't riding a roller coaster of energy spikes and crashes. This sounds like basic health advice, but you must reframe it. This is not about health. This is about combat readiness. Every time you choose the salad over the pizza or the extra hour of sleep over the late-night Netflix binge, you are sharpening your blade. You are reducing the latency of your operating system, the dopamine casino. However, physical health is only one layer of the static. The thicker, more dangerous layer is digital.
We need to talk about your phone. Your smartphone is a slot machine. Every time you check it, you are pulling the lever. Sometimes you get a reward, a like, a message, a funny video. Sometimes you get nothing. This intermittent reinforcement loop is designed to hack your dopamine receptors. It trains your brain to crave constant, high-speed, low-effort stimulation. Here is the tragedy. Social media is training you to be a passive consumer of content, rather than an active creator of thought. When you spend 3 hours a day scrolling through 15-second videos, you are fracturing your attention span. You are training your brain that a thought should only last 10 seconds before switching to something new. You are destroying your ability to hold a single thread of concentration. Conversation requires deep focus. To be witty, you must listen to a sentence, hold it in your working memory, analyze it, compare it to your internal database, and construct a reply. This requires a sustained arc of attention. If your brain is conditioned to switch contexts every 15 seconds, you will fail at this. You will listen to the first half of a sentence, and then your brain will itch for a new stimulus. You will zone out. You will miss the setup, so you cannot deliver the punchline. This is why TikTok brain is lethal to charisma. It creates a mind that is frantic, shallow, and incapable of the deep processing required for true insight. To clear the static, you must reclaim your dopamine. You need to become boring. You need to practice sitting in a room for 20 minutes without a phone, without music, without a screen. You need to retrain your brain to tolerate the boredom of a single stream of input.
When you detox from the digital drip feed, you will notice a terrifying clarity return to your thoughts. The noise subsides. And suddenly, when you're in a conversation, you are not itching to check your notifications. You are locked in. You are present. And presence is the foundation of speed. The Zeigarnik effect. There is a concept in psychology called the Zeigarnik effect. It states that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed ones. Ideally, this helps us remember to finish things. Practically, it means that every unfinished task in your life is a background process running on your computer, eating up your RAM. The email you forgot to reply to, the laundry sitting in the dryer, the weird noise your car is making that you haven't checked yet, the apology you owe your friend. Each of these is an open loop. Your unconscious mind is constantly scanning these loops, worrying about them, trying to keep them active so you don't forget. Imagine trying to play a high-speed video game while your computer is simultaneously rendering a 4K video in the background. The game will lag. The frame rate will drop. When you're in a conversation, you want 100% of your RAM available for the interaction. But if 40% of your RAM is dedicated to holding on to open loops, you are operating at a deficit. You are slower than you should be because you are mentally multitasking even if you don't realize it. To think faster, you must close the loops. You need a system to offload these tasks. This is why high performers are obsessive about lists and calendars. It is not just about organization, it is about cognitive offloading.
The moment you write a task down on a list, your brain allows itself to forget it. It says, okay, the paper is holding that information now. I can let go. The RAM is freed up. The static clears. If you feel your mind is cluttered and slow,
Take an hour. Sit down with a pen and paper. Write down every single open loop in your life, from the major project at work to the light bulb that needs changing. Get it out of your head and onto the physical page. You will feel a physical sensation of lightness. That lightness is speed. It is the feeling of a machine that is finally running at optimal capacity. The input-output imbalance. There is another source of static that is specific to the modern age: information gluttony. We consume more information in a single day than our ancestors consumed in a lifetime. News, podcasts, tweets, articles, opinions, statistics, we gorge ourselves on data, but we rarely process it. We rarely synthesize it. Imagine a factory that keeps accepting deliveries of raw materials, steel, wood, plastic, but the assembly line is broken. The warehouse just piles up higher and higher. Eventually, there is no room to move. The workers can't find the tools they need because they are buried under piles of unused raw materials. This is your mind on information overload. You read a fascinating article, but you don't take the time to think about it. You listen to a podcast, but you immediately start the next one without reflecting on the first. You are hoarding data, but you are not building knowledge. This creates mental congestion. When you try to speak, you have a vague sense that you know something about the topic, but you can't find the specific fact.
It's buried in the warehouse. You stumble. You say, "I read this thing once, I can't remember the details, but it was interesting." That is not wit. That is clutter. To clear the static, you must balance your input with your output. For every hour you spend consuming content, you should spend time digesting it. Talk about it, write about it, debate it with yourself. Turn the raw information into structured knowledge. When you synthesize information, you are organizing the warehouse. You are putting the steel on the steel shelf and the wood on the wood shelf. The next time you need a fact to win an argument, you know exactly where it is. You can grab it instantly. Stop being a glutton. Start being a curator. A mind filled with a few well-organized, deeply understood ideas is infinitely faster and sharper than a mind filled with a million fragmented, half-remembered facts. The protocol of stillness. So, how do we operationalize this? How do we build a lifestyle that prioritizes mental velocity? We need a protocol, a set of rules to keep the static at bay. Rule 1. The first hour is sacred. Do not touch your phone for the first hour of the day. No emails, no social media, no news. Your brain is most plastic and sensitive in the morning. If you flood it with cortisol and dopamine right away, you ruined your focus for the rest of the day. Keep the first hour for output, journaling, thinking, exercising, not input. Rule 2. Single tasking. Stop multitasking. It is a lie. You are not doing two things at once. You are switching rapidly between them and doing both poorly. When you wash the dishes, just wash the dishes. When you write, just write.
Train your brain to be comfortable with one focal point. This builds the mental muscle required to hold a conversation without getting distracted. Rule 3. The brain dump. Every evening, before you sleep, write down the 3 most important things for tomorrow. Close the loops. Tell your brain, we are done for today. This prevents the background processing that ruins your sleep and clouds your morning. Rule 4. Silence. Build pockets of silence into your day. No music, no podcasts, just driving or walking or sitting. Let your mind wander. It is in these moments of silence that your brain does its housekeeping. It sorts memories, makes connections, and clears the cache. If you fill every second with noise, the housekeeping never happens. The dust settles, the static builds. The clarity of the knife. When you implement these changes, you will not feel the difference immediately. It takes time to detox. It takes time to pay off the sleep debt and organize the mental warehouse. But after a week or two, you will notice a shift. You will be in a conversation and someone will say something challenging. In the past, you would have felt that familiar fog. You would have felt the pressure behind the eyes. You would have grasped for a thought and found only smoke. But this time, it will be different. The room will feel clear. The words will hit you with high-definition clarity. Your mind, unburdened by the weight of fatigue and distraction, will snap into action. The connection will be made. The response will be there, resting on the tip of your tongue, ready to be fired. You will realize that you didn't need to learn a magic trick. You didn't need to memorize a dictionary. You just needed to wash the windshield.
You cannot drive at 200 miles per hour if you cannot see the road. Clear the static, clear the fog, and watch how fast you can really go. Chapter 3. Ammunition for the mind. You have diagnosed the lag. You have cleared the static. You have slept, hydrated, and put down your phone. Your mind is now a pristine, high-performance factory floor. The machinery is oiled, the conveyor belts are running at maximum speed, the lights are on. But the warehouse is empty. This is the second tragedy of the modern thinker. We have people with healthy brains and fast processors who still have absolutely nothing to say. When they open their mouths, silence falls. Not because they are blocked by fear, but because they are bankrupt of content. You cannot manufacture a product without raw materials. You cannot build a house without bricks. And you cannot produce wit without knowledge. Wit is not a magical substance that you conjure out of thin air. It is a chemical reaction. It is the act of taking two unrelated ideas and smashing them together to create a third, new idea. It is the spark that flies when a reference from 18th century history collides with a reference from modern pop culture. If you do not have the history, and you do not have the pop culture, you do not get the spark. You get a dull thud. In this chapter, we are going to talk about stocking the armory. We are going to discuss the acquisition of mental ammunition, facts, stories, words, and concepts that form the building blocks of charisma. If you want to think faster, you need a library of references that is so vast and so well organized that you can pull the perfect book off the shelf without even looking.
The mathematics of connection. Let's break down the mechanics of a clever comment. Someone complains about their micromanaging boss. A slow thinker says, "Yeah, that sounds really annoying." A fast, witty thinker says, "He sounds like he's trying to run a North Korean border patrol, not a marketing department." Why does the second comment work? It works because of association. The wit didn't come from the situation itself. It came from the thinker accessing an external reference, North Korean border patrol, and overlaying it onto the current reality, the office. The humor lies in the exaggeration and the unexpected connection between a mundane office job and a geopolitical dictatorship. To make that joke, you had to have the concept of North Korea stored in your mental database. You had to know what it implies: strictness, surveillance, absurdity. If you had never heard of North Korea, that neural pathway would be a dead end. You would have been stuck with, "Yeah, that's annoying." This is the surface area of luck. Imagine your knowledge is a net. If you have a tiny net, if you only know about your specific job and the last 3 TV shows you watched, you have a very small surface area. Most of the conversational balls thrown at you will sail right past you. You won't catch them. You won't be able to riff on them because you have no reference points to hook onto. But if you have a giant net, if you know a little bit about psychology, a little bit about mechanics, a little bit about art history, sports, cooking, and politics, you catch everything. No matter what topic arises, you have a hook. You have a metaphor ready to go.
The person who can talk to anyone is not the person who is an expert in one thing. It is the person who is a student of everything. The high-low mix. There is a specific type of knowledge that breeds the highest form of charisma. I call it the high-low mix. The most interesting people in the world are able to toggle effortlessly between high culture and low culture.
High culture is philosophy, classical history, science, literature, and finance. Low culture is reality TV, memes, fast food, celebrity gossip, and slang. If you are only fluent in high culture, you seem arrogant, stiff, and out of touch. You are a professor, not a conversationalist. You bore people with your pedantry. If you are only fluent in low culture, you seem shallow. You are entertaining for 5 minutes, but you lack substance. You cannot command respect. The lethal combination, the point where true wit lives, is in the middle. It is the ability to use a principle from Machiavelli to explain a dispute on The Real Housewives. It is the ability to compare a fluctuating cryptocurrency to a Shakespearean tragedy. When you mix the high and the low, you surprise the brain. You signal two things simultaneously. I am intelligent enough to understand complex systems. I am grounded enough to enjoy the absurdity of modern life. This makes you relatable and impressive. To build this mix, you must audit your consumption. If you are a serious academic type, you need to force yourself to consume some junk. Watch the trending movie. Listen to the top 40 song. Understand the memes your younger colleagues are using. You don't have to love it, but you have to understand the language of the tribe.
Conversely, if you consume mostly junk, you need to eat your vegetables, read a biography of Napoleon, learn the basics of behavioral economics, study the structure of a suspension bridge. You are building a diverse portfolio of metaphors. The wider the spread, the faster you can adapt to any room you walk into. The resolution of thought, vocabulary. Now, let's talk about the tools you use to deliver these ideas. Words. There is a misconception that having a large vocabulary is about showing off. People think it means using long, obscure words like pulchritudinous instead of beautiful. That is not wit, that is pretension. The purpose of a large vocabulary is not complexity, it is precision. Think of your vocabulary like the resolution of a computer screen. If you have a low vocabulary, your thoughts are in 480p resolution. They are blocky, blurry, and vague. You describe things as good, bad, sad, or mad. I was mad. This sentence is low resolution. It tells us almost nothing. Were you annoyed? Were you furious? Were you indignant? Were you apoplectic? I was apoplectic. This is 4K resolution. It conveys a specific type of anger, one that is so intense it renders you speechless and shaking. It paints a picture. When you have a limited vocabulary, your brain has to work harder to explain itself. You have to use more words to convey a simple feeling. You ramble. I was like really angry, like I just couldn't believe he did that, and I was shaking. When you have the precise word, you cut through the noise. You are efficient. To think faster, you must upgrade your software. You need to collect words. But do not memorize the dictionary. Instead, hunt for words that describe specific human experiences or concepts. Learn words like schadenfreude, taking pleasure in the misfortune of others. Learn words like sonder, the realization that every passerby has a life as vivid and complex as your own. Learn specific verbs. Don't say he walked slowly. Say he trudged. Say he sauntered. Say he prowled. The right verb eliminates the need for an adverb. It speeds up your sentence. It punches the listener in the imagination. The lattice of mental models. Charlie Munger, the billionaire business partner of Warren Buffett, famously attributes his success to a lattice of mental models. Most people store information in isolation. They learn a fact about history, and it sits in the history box. They learn a fact about biology, and it sits in the biology box. The boxes never touch. A witty mind removes the walls between the boxes.
It looks for the underlying patterns, the models that govern both. For example, natural selection is a biological concept. But if you understand the model of natural selection, survival of the fittest, adaptation to environment, you can apply it to business. You can apply it to dating. You can apply it to fashion trends. That startup failed because it didn't have product-market fit. It was a dodo bird in an ice age. That is a cross-disciplinary connection. You used biology to explain economics. To build your lattice, stop asking, what happened? And start asking, why did this happen? Why do empires fall? Overexpansion? Corruption? Loss of shared identity? Why do bridges collapse? Resonance? Fatigue? Hidden cracks? Why do cults form? Isolation? Charismatic leadership? Promise of salvation? Once you understand the why, the mechanism, you can apply that mechanism to anything.
You can look at a celebrity scandal and say, this is just the Roman Empire collapsing in slow motion. You can look at a dysfunctional family dinner and see the physics of resonance. This is the secret to appearing infinitely wise. You don't actually need to know everything about the specific topic at hand. You just need to recognize the pattern it follows. The curiosity engine. So how do we acquire this ammunition? Most adults stop learning the day they leave school. They calcify. They find a few topics they like, maybe golf or politics or cooking, and they build a fortress around those topics. They refuse to let anything new in. This is the death of wit. To keep your mind sharp, you must cultivate a curiosity engine. You must become aggressively interested in things that have nothing to do with you. If you are a mechanic, read a book about typography. If you are a graphic designer, read a manual on survival skills. If you are an atheist, read the Bible. If you are religious, read Dawkins. Step outside your echo chamber. The echo chamber is comfortable, but it is predictable, and predictability is the enemy of speed. If you always think the same thoughts, you will always speak the same words. Make it a habit to go down rabbit holes. When you hear a term you don't know, do not let it slide. Google it. Read the Wikipedia page. Watch the 10-minute YouTube documentary. Did someone mention the tulip mania of the 1600s? Look it up. Did someone mention the Pareto principle? Look it up. Collect these nuggets. Hoard them. You are a dragon gathering gold. You don't know when you will need to spend it, but you want the pile to be high.
The art of stealing. Finally, do not be afraid to steal. Every great artist is a thief. Every great conversationalist is an aggregator. When you hear someone else say something brilliant, a metaphor, a joke structure, a profound insight, write it down. Keep a commonplace book. This is an old tradition used by thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Thomas Jefferson. It is simply a notebook where you copy down the best passages, quotes, and ideas you encounter. By writing them down, you encode them into your memory. You are loading the gun. Next time you are in a conversation, you won't have to invent a brilliant thought from scratch. You will just have to remember one. You know, Oscar Wilde once said that experience is simply the name we give our mistakes. I think that applies here. You just borrowed the wit of Oscar Wilde. You look like a genius, but all you did was act as a librarian. You retrieved the book. There is no shame in this. Culture is a conversation that has been going on for thousands of years. Your job is not to reinvent the language. Your job is to participate in it. The warehouse is open. Here is your directive for this chapter. Diversify your inputs. If you listen to the same 3 podcasts as everyone else, you will think the same thoughts as everyone else. If you watch the same news channel every night, you are just a parrot repeating the script. Go to the library. Walk to a section you have never visited, maybe gardening, or architecture, or biography. Pick a book at random. Read the first chapter. Listen to a genre of music you hate. Try to understand why other people love it. What is the structure? What is the appeal? Talk to a stranger who lives a completely different life than you. Ask them what their day looks like. Ask them what they worry about. Every new piece of information is a potential hook. Every new word is a bullet. Every new concept is a bridge. You cannot think faster than you speak if you have nothing to think about. Stop trying to squeeze water from a dry stone. Fill the well. Flood the warehouse. When your mind is overflowing with ideas, you won't have to search for them. They will be fighting to get out. Chapter 4. The Art of Aggressive Listening. Most people think they are good listeners. They are wrong. Most people think listening is a passive act. They believe it is simply the act of waiting. It is the polite pause you endure while the other person makes mouth noises, effectively holding your spot in line until you can speak again. While the other person is talking, the average person is not analyzing the data. They are not deconstructing the argument. They are not observing the nuance of tone. Instead, they are frantic. They are mentally rehearsing their own script. Okay, when he stops breathing, I'm going to tell that story about my trip to Chicago. Wait, did I already tell him that? Okay, I'll talk about the weather. No, that's boring. By the time the other person finishes speaking, the average listener has heard almost nothing. They have been deafened by their own internal monologue. This is why you are slow. You are trying to create a response from scratch, in a vacuum, ignoring the massive amount of material that was just handed to you on a silver platter. You are trying to cook a meal without looking in the refrigerator. If you want to think fast, you must stop listening politely and start listening aggressively. The predator versus the prey. In the animal kingdom, prey animals have eyes on the sides of their heads. This gives them a wide field of vision to detect danger from any angle. They are reactive. They are scanning for threats. Predators have eyes on the front of their heads. This gives them binocular vision. It allows them to lock onto a single target, judge depth with absolute precision, and track movement without distraction. Aggressive listening is binocular. It is predatory. It is the conscious decision to shut down your internal monologue, to kill the me voice, and direct 100% of your cognitive resources onto the other person. You are not waiting for your turn. You are hunting for the hook. You are scanning their sentences for the weak point, the funny word, the logical fallacy, or the emotional core. When you listen this way, speed becomes inevitable. Why? Because the response is not generated inside your head, it is extracted from theirs. The judo of conversation. In the martial art of judo, you do not use your own strength to throw an opponent. You use their momentum. If they push, you pull. If they rush at you, you trip them. You use their energy to execute the move. Conversation works the same way. The fastest thinkers do not generate new energy, they redirect the energy coming at them. If someone tells you a long, rambling story about their terrible landlord, a passive listener thinks, I need to tell a story about my landlord to relate. This requires you to retrieve a memory, format it, and deliver it. That takes time. An aggressive listener thinks, he used the word tyrant to describe a guy who just wants the rent paid on time? That's an overreaction. I can use that. You immediately pivot. So, are we talking about a landlord, or did you accidentally sign a lease with Genghis Khan? See the difference? You didn't have to invent a story. You didn't have to access a database. You just took his energy, his exaggeration, and flipped it back at him. You used the feed. In improv comedy, the feed is the line the straight man gives to the comic. The comic cannot be funny without the feed. If you are not listening aggressively, you miss the feed. You miss the raw material that makes the witty response possible. Silence the rehearsal loop. The biggest barrier to this type of listening is the rehearsal loop. This is the anxiety-driven habit of drafting your response while the other person is still talking. It comes from a lack of trust. You do not trust that your brain will come up with an answer in the moment, so you try to prepare one in advance. The problem is that conversations are fluid. They change direction every few seconds. If you start rehearsing a response to the first sentence of a paragraph, by the time the speaker gets to the last sentence, the topic has shifted. Your rehearsed line is now irrelevant. You are left holding a script for a scene that is already ended. You must develop the audacity to enter a conversation with an empty head. This feels dangerous. It feels like walking onto a tightrope without a net. But it is actually the safest place to be. When your head is empty, it is nimble. You are not weighed down by a pre-planned agenda. You are free to react to exactly what is happening right now. Train yourself to drop the script. When you feel that urge to plan your sentence, mentally slap it away. Force your attention back to the speaker's face. Tell yourself, I don't know what I'm going to say next, and I don't care. I will find the answer in their words. Decoding the subtext. Aggressive listening is not just about hearing the words. It is about hearing the music. Human speech is composed of two channels: the text, what is said, and the subtext, what is meant. The text is often boring. The subtext is where the truth, the humor, and the conflict live. A slow thinker processes the text. A fast thinker processes the subtext. Example: a colleague walks in, slams a file on the desk, sighs loudly, and says, "I love Monday mornings." If you listen to the text, you might be confused. You love them, but you seem angry. If you listen to the subtext, sarcasm, frustration, exhaustion, the response is obvious. You don't respond to the words, you respond to the slam. I can tell. You put that folder down with the tenderness of a sledgehammer. You're calling out the reality, not the words. This is called labeling the dynamic. To develop this skill, you must become an observer of micro behaviors. Watch the eyes, watch the hands, listen to the pitch of the voice. Did their voice go up at the end of the sentence? They are seeking approval. Did they break eye contact when they mention the price? They are insecure about the value. Did they use a specific, unusual word 3 times? That word is important to them.
When you spot these anomalies, you don't need to be a genius to have something to say. You just point at the anomaly. You've said the word safe 3 times in the last minute. Are you trying to convince me or yourself? That is a devastatingly sharp question. And it required 0 outside knowledge. It only required you to be paying attention. The echo technique. One of the simplest ways to buy time and appear thoughtful is the echo technique. This is a tool used by FBI negotiators and top-tier therapists, but it works perfectly for casual wit. When you are listening aggressively, pick out the most emotionally charged word or phrase the person just used. When they finish speaking, simply repeat that word back to them as a question, or spin it slightly. Them. I just feel like I'm running on a treadmill that's going slightly too fast, you know? You. Slightly too fast? This does 2 things. First, it forces them to elaborate, which buys you more time to think. Second, it shows you are locked in. But to make it witty, you echo and escalate. Them. I just feel like I'm running on a treadmill that's going slightly too fast. You. So you're not just tired, you're a hazard to yourself and others. You took the image they gave you, treadmill, and extrapolated the consequence. You didn't have to come up with the treadmill metaphor. They gave it to you. You just added the punchline. The specificity of language. Lazy listeners hear concepts. Aggressive listeners hear specifics. If someone says, "I went to this terrible restaurant last night," the lazy listener categorizes this as bad food story. They zone out. The aggressive listener hunts for details. What made it terrible? Was it the food? The service? The lighting? If the person says, "The waiter looked like he hadn't slept in a week and the pasta was cold," the aggressive listener latches on to the sleepless waiter. "So, you were served by a zombie. Did you tip him in brains or cash?" The detail is the handle. You cannot pick up a smooth, round object. It slips out of your hands. You need a handle. Details are handles. The more specific the detail you notice, the easier it is to grab onto the topic and twist it into something new. When you are listening, you are collecting these handles. You are looking for hyperbole. Are they exaggerating? Call them out on it. Contradiction. Did they say 2 things that don't match? Highlight the absurdity. Metaphor. Did they use a figure of speech? Take it literally. The pause of the predator.
We discussed the pause in Chapter 1 as a way to settle your own nerves. Now, let's look at the pause as an interrogation technique. When you are listening aggressively and the person stops talking, you do not need to jump in immediately. Sometimes, the most powerful move is to wait. Keep your eyes on them. Keep your face neutral or slightly amused. Wait 2 seconds. Human beings hate a vacuum. If you don't speak, they will often start talking again. And usually, the second thing they say is more honest, more vulnerable, or more ridiculous than the first thing. They might say, "I'm really considering quitting my job." You wait. "Honestly, I think I just hate my boss." Now you have the real truth. Now you can react to the hate, not just the quitting. By waiting, you let them dig the hole deeper, which gives you more room to maneuver. The structural deconstruction. Finally, aggressive listening involves listening to the structure of their logic. Every argument, every complaint, and every story has a premise. Often that premise is flawed. If you can identify the flaw, you can dismantle the entire structure with one sentence. For example, a friend says, "I can't believe she broke up with me. I did everything for her. I bought her gifts, I drove her everywhere, I paid for dinner." The premise here is, relationships are transactional. If I put coins in, love should come out. An aggressive listener hears this equation and attacks it directly. Sounds like you were trying to be our accountant, not our boyfriend. You didn't argue with the facts, the gifts, the driving. You argued with the underlying logic. This is the highest form of wit, reframing the entire reality of the conversation. But you can only do it if you are listening deep enough to hear the gears turning beneath the words. Practice the interrogation. To build this skill, you need to gamify your daily interactions. Tomorrow, when you are in a conversation, play a game called Spot the Weirdness. Your only goal is to find one thing in the other person's speech that is slightly off-center. A strange word choice, a nervous twitch, a logic gap. Don't worry about being funny yet. Just worry about seeing it. Once you start seeing it, you will realize that the world is writing your material for you. People are constantly handing you loaded guns. They are constantly setting you up for the spike. You have been missing these opportunities because you have been too busy looking at your own cards. Put your cards down. Look at their hand.
Chapter 5. The Velocity of Association. The logical mind travels by train. It moves on a track. It goes from station A to station B, then to station C, and finally arrives at station D. It is reliable. It is safe. It is predictable. And it is agonizingly slow. The witty mind does not travel by train. It travels by teleportation. It looks at station A, and it instantly appears at station Z. This jump, this sudden, inexplicable leap across the chasm of logic, is what we call lateral thinking. If you want to think faster, you must abandon the safety of the tracks. You have been trained your entire life to be logical. In school, you were taught that 1 + 1 = 2. In business, you were taught that cause leads to effect. But in conversation, logic is the enemy of speed. Logic requires verification. Logic requires steps. Wit requires none of these things. Wit requires the audacity to connect two things that have absolutely no business being connected. This chapter is about the velocity of association. It is about training your brain to stop walking step by step and start jumping. We're going to look at the machinery of improvisation and how to bypass the logic gate that is slowing you down. The geometry of a joke. To understand speed, we must understand the geometry of a thought. A standard conversation is linear. Speaker 1. It is raining outside. Speaker 2. Yes, I should have brought an umbrella. This is a straight line. It is functional, but it is dead. There is no energy because there is no surprise. A witty conversation is a triangle. Speaker 1. It is raining outside. Great. Now my hair is going to look like a wet poodle in a wind tunnel. Notice what happened here. The brain did not go rain to umbrella. That is the logical path. The brain went rain to wet to hair to bad hair day to poodle to wind tunnel. The slow thinker walks that entire path, stepping on every stone. By the time they get to wind tunnel, the topic has changed. The fast thinker skips the middle steps. They see rain and they immediately jump to the absurd image of the poodle. This is the secret. Speed is not about thinking faster along the line. It is about skipping the line entirely. You must train your brain to act like a search engine that is feeling lucky. You type in a keyword, and instead of looking for the most accurate result, you look for the most distant, colorful result that is still technically relevant. The neural highway. Your brain is a network of associations. Every concept you know is connected to thousands of other concepts. If I say dog, your brain lights up. Cat, bone, bark, leash, fur. These are first-degree associations. They are the obvious neighbors. Everyone in the room has these same associations. If you use them, you will be understood, but you will be boring. To be witty, you need to access third-degree associations. Dog, wolf, moon, werewolf, teen wolf movie, bad CGI. Now, if someone mentions their dog acting crazy, the first-degree thinker says, maybe he needs a walk. The third-degree thinker says, check the lunar calendar. He might be turning into a werewolf with bad CGI. The distance between dog and bad CGI is where the humor lives.
That distance creates the spark. So how do we increase the velocity of these jumps? We have to widen the highway. We have to practice making connections that don't exist yet. Drill. The random word generator. You can practice this alone right now. Look around the room. Pick an object. Now pick a second, completely unrelated object. Your job is to connect them in a sentence immediately. Object 1, stapler. Object 2, alligator. Connection? My boss holds on to money like an alligator protecting a stapler. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It just has to be a bridge. The more you force your brain to build these bridges, the faster the construction crew becomes. You are myelinating the neural pathways for divergent thinking. Most people let their divergent thinking muscles atrophy. They only use convergent thinking, narrowing down to the one right answer. You need to practice exploding out to 100 wrong answers. The yes and protocol. Improv comedians are the fastest thinkers on the planet. They have to be. They have no script, no plan, and an audience expecting brilliance. Their entire philosophy is built on two words, yes and. This is not just a rule for stage, it is a rule for life. No is a stop sign, but is a speed bump. Yes and is an accelerator. When someone says something to you, your reality is now defined by their statement. If you try to deny it or correct it, you halt the momentum. You have to stop, turn the car around, and start again. That takes time. To move fast, you must accept their reality, yes, and add to it. And. Them. This coffee tastes like mud. Block. Slow. Really? I think it's a dark roast. The momentum dies.
Yes, I'm pretty sure they just scooped it out of a puddle in the parking lot. You accepted the premise, it tastes like mud, and you accelerated it. It is literally mud from the parking lot. This technique removes the friction of decision-making. You don't have to decide if they're right. You just assume they're right and take it to the extreme. This cuts your processing time in half. The exaggeration engine. One of the easiest ways to utilize lateral thinking is through the exaggeration engine. The human brain loves scale. We love things that are huge, tiny, fast, or slow. Wit often comes from taking a normal situation and stretching it until it snaps. If a meeting is boring, don't say, "This is boring." That is linear. Stretch it.
I have aged 3 decades since this slide deck started. My grandchildren are graduating college right now. If a room is cold, don't say, "It's chilly." Stretch it. I saw a penguin huddled in the corner shivering. The formula is simple. Identify the core trait, plus multiply by 100. This requires zero analysis. You just take the input and dial the volume knob to the maximum. It is a brute force method for speed, but it is incredibly effective because it bypasses the need for nuance. Nuance is slow, caricature is fast. The metaphor shortcut. Complex ideas take a long time to explain. Metaphors take a split second. If you are trying to explain why a project is failing because of too many managers, you could give a 5-minute speech about organizational hierarchy and bottlenecks. Or you could use a metaphor.
We don't have a team. We have a choir where everyone is trying to sing a solo at the same time. Boom. Image planted. Point made. To develop a sharp mind, you must become a simile machine. You should constantly be asking yourself, what is this like? This confusion is like an IKEA instruction manual written in hieroglyphics. This silence is like a funeral for a mime. This excitement is like a golden retriever seeing a tennis ball for the first time. The structure of a fast metaphor is subject plus shared quality plus unrelated object. The more unrelated the object, the funnier the metaphor. If you compare a bad boss to a bad manager, it's boring. If you compare a bad boss to a toddler with a loaded weapon, it's memorable. Breaking the pattern. The human brain is a prediction machine. When someone starts a sentence, your brain automatically tries to finish it. An apple a day keeps the, you thought, doctor away. The early bird gets the, you thought, worm. Wit is the art of breaking that prediction. It is leading the listener down the garden path and then pushing them into the bushes. The early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. To think fast, you need to identify the cliché and invert it. When you hear a common phrase, a common opinion, or a standard greeting, your instinct should be to derail it. Them, hard work pays off. You, yeah, usually for the guy who hired you. Them, money can't buy happiness. You, no, but it can buy a jet ski. And have you ever seen a sad person on a jet ski? This is called a reverse.
You lull them into safety with the setup, and then you hit them with the contrast. The speed comes from the fact that you don't need to invent a new topic. You just need to flip the existing one upside down. Suspending the internal censor again. We must revisit the internal censor here because lateral thinking is inherently risky. When your brain jumps from rain to poodle, your logic gate will try to stop you. It will say, "That makes no sense. That is silly. People will look at you strangely." You must understand that sense is overrated. In casual conversation, energy wins over accuracy. People would rather be entertained by a loose association than bored by a strict fact. You have to give yourself permission to be absurd. You have to be willing to say the thing that is 80% correct but 100% interesting. If you describe your tall friend as a giraffe trying to blend in at a human party, is that accurate? No. He does not have spots. He does not have a long neck. But it captures the essence of his height and awkwardness faster than a literal description ever could. Speed comes from trusting the gist. Don't look for the perfect word, look for the vibe, look for the image. Throw the paint at the wall and let the listener's brain finish the picture. The associative state of flow. Have you ever been in a conversation where you were on fire? You were cracking jokes, making connections, and everyone was laughing. You felt effortless. That is the associative state of flow. In that state, your prefrontal cortex, the editor, relaxes, and your association cortices, the connectors, go into overdrive. You cannot force this state, but you can invite it. You invite it by lowering the stakes. When you treat a conversation like a job interview, you tighten up. You stick to the tracks. When you treat a conversation like a game, you loosen up. You start jumping. The next time you are in a low-stakes environment, talking to a barista, hanging out with old friends, practice the jump. Force yourself to make a weird comparison. Force yourself to use a metaphor. Can I get a coffee? Sure. Room for cream? Yeah, leave enough room for a small boat to turn around. It's a small thing, but you are training the muscle. You are teaching your brain that it is okay to leave the tracks.
Chapter 6. The Mechanics of Wit. Wit is often mistaken for sorcery. When we watch a charismatic speaker or a brilliant comedian, we look at them with a sense of awe. We believe they are channeling some divine energy, plucking genius out of the ether. We think, I could never do that. My brain just isn't wired that way. This is the great deception of social mastery. Wit is not magic. It is not a mystical gift bestowed upon a chosen few at birth. Wit is engineering. It is architecture. It is mathematics. Behind every burst of laughter and every gasp of admiration lies a hidden structure, a skeleton of logic that holds the joke together. If you strip away the personality and the specific words, you will find the same few formulas being used over and over again, from the days of Aristotle to the modern stand-up special. You do not need to be naturally funny to be witty, any more than you need to be a natural carpenter to build a table. You just need to know how to use the saw and the hammer. You need the blueprints. In this chapter, we are going to pull back the curtain. We are going to stop looking at wit as an art form and start looking at it as a set of algorithms. We will break down the mechanics of the punchline, the geometry of the misdirection, and the physics of the callback. Once you see the code, you can hack the system. The rule of three. The most fundamental law of comedy and rhetoric is the rule of three. The human brain is a pattern recognition machine. It craves order. It constantly tries to predict what comes next.
The number 3 is the smallest number required to create a pattern. 1 is a dot, 2 is a line, 3 is a pattern. The formula for the rule of 3 is simple. Setup, setup, punchline. The first 2 items establish the pattern. They create an expectation in the listener's mind. They set the direction of the train. The third item, the punchline, derails the train. It breaks the pattern you just created. Setup, normal. I'm looking for a man who is kind. Setup, normal. I'm looking for a man who is intelligent. Punchline, absurd. And I'm looking for a man who doesn't know I'm looking for him. If you had only used 2 items, there would be no rhythm. I want a kind man who doesn't know I exist. It's too fast. The brain didn't have time to settle into the comfort of the virtuous list before you hit it with the stalker twist. If you used 4 items, you would lose the momentum. The audience would get bored. 3 is the magic number. It builds tension and releases it perfectly. To use this in conversation, you simply list 2 normal things and then replace the third normal thing with something exaggerated, opposite, or self-deprecating. My weekend plans? Oh, going to the gym, doing some meal prep, and staring at the ceiling questioning my life choices. To succeed in this company, you need 3 things: hard work, dedication, and a complete lack of a gag reflex. This structure is a plug-and-play template. You can use it in a boardroom, a bar, or a eulogy. Establish the norm, shatter the norm. The benign violation theory. Why do we laugh? Psychologists propose the benign violation theory.
Humor occurs when something violates our expectations or social norms, a violation, but in a way that is not actually threatening, benign. If you walk down the street and see a man trip and fall into a fountain, you laugh. That is a benign violation. It is a violation of dignity and walking mechanics, but he isn't hurt, so it is benign. If you see a man trip and fall under a bus, you do not laugh. That is a malign violation. It is a tragedy. If you see a man walk down the street normally, you do not laugh. That is benign, but there is no violation. To be witty, you must navigate this narrow channel. You must say things that are slightly wrong, slightly rude, slightly absurd, slightly dark, but keep them safe enough that the listener knows you are playing. This is where the misdirection comes in. The garden path misdirection. Misdirection is the art of leading the listener down a garden path, only to push them into the bushes at the last second. It relies on the assumption gap. When you start a sentence, the listener makes an assumption about how it will end based on social context. Your job is to identify that assumption and subvert it. Start. I want to die peacefully in my sleep like my grandfather. Assumption. You will say something sentimental. End. Not screaming in terror like the passengers in his car. The wit comes from the gap between the sentimental image of a dying grandfather and the sudden violent reality of a car crash. To master this, you need to become aware of the cliches people expect. If someone asks, "How is your diet going?" the expected answer is either good or bad.
The misdirection answer plays with the definition of the word diet. Great, I've lost 3 days of happiness already. You are pivoting from physical weight to emotional weight. If someone asks, "What do you look for in a partner?" I look for a girl with a good head on her shoulders, preferably one she keeps there. The pivot here is from intelligence, a head on her shoulders, to not decapitated. It is dark, it is absurd, and it works because it subverts the standard dating cliché. The callback. If the rule of 3 is the jab, the callback is the knockout punch. A callback is when you reference a joke, a comment, or a detail that was mentioned earlier in the conversation. It connects the present moment to the past moment, creating a closed loop. Callbacks are powerful for 2 reasons. Reward. They reward the listener for paying attention. It makes them feel smart for getting it. Intimacy. It creates an inside joke feeling. For that brief moment, the 2 of you share a secret language that an outsider wouldn't understand. Structure a conversation like a movie script. In the first act, the beginning of the chat, someone mentions a detail. Maybe they mention they are afraid of spiders. Pin that detail. Put it in your pocket. Do not use it yet. 20 minutes later, the third act, you were talking about a difficult client at work. Yeah, dealing with him is tough. He's got 8 legs and spins a web of lies. Boom! You brought the spider back. The wit is not in the line itself. If you just said that line out of the blue, it would be weird. The wit is in the connection.
You have demonstrated that you are listening, that you have a quick memory, and that you can weave 2 disparate threads together. The best callbacks are recontextualized. You take a detail that was serious earlier and use it as a punchline later. Or you take a joke from earlier and use it as a serious metaphor later. Always be hunting for the brick. A brick is a distinct, memorable noun or phrase thrown out early in the conversation. Pick up the brick, carry it, and when the window opens, throw it through it. The reverse, irony. Irony is the staple of the sharp mind. It is the practice of saying exactly the opposite of what is true in a tone that suggests you believe it. This works because it forces the listener to do the work. They have to decode your meaning. If it is pouring rain and you say, "What lovely weather," that is low-level irony. It's a cliché. To upgrade this, you need specific irony. Instead of just saying the opposite, you paint a picture of the opposite. I love this weather. It really brings out the aquatic potential of my suede shoes. You are praising the destruction of your shoes. The most effective form of irony in conversation is agree and amplify, which we touched on in the yes and section. When someone insults you or challenges you, do not defend yourself. Agree with them, but ironically, exaggerate their claim until it becomes ridiculous. Them, you're late. You, I know, I'm actually aiming for a world record in tardiness. I think I need to be another 10 minutes later tomorrow to qualify for the regionals. By treating your tardiness as a competitive sport, you disarm the conflict. You acknowledge the fault, you are late, but you refuse to accept the shame. You frame it as a choice. The comparison, simile, and metaphor. We discussed the importance of metaphors in Chapter 5, but let's look at the mechanics of constructing a funny comparison. The formula is subject
equals pop culture symbol plus degradation. You want to compare the person or situation to something recognizable, but a budget version of it. He looks like Brad Pitt. If Brad Pitt had been left in the microwave for 3 minutes. She sings like Mariah Carey, falling down a flight of stairs. This plan is like the Titanic, but without the live band to comfort us while we drown. The structure creates an image of greatness and then immediately degrades it. This specific high-low contrast triggers the laugh reflex, the specificity principle. Vagueness is the enemy of wit. Specificity is the soul of wit. Funny words are funnier because they are specific. Cheese is funnier than food. Weasel is funnier than animal. Spandex is funnier than clothing. The sounds of the words matter. Words with K and P sounds, plosives, are linguistically funnier. They strike the ear with a percussive rhythm. Pickle, cupcake, Cadillac, poodle. Compare these two sentences. He was driving a really old car. He was driving a 1993 Honda Civic that sounded like a lawnmower with asthma. The second sentence wins because of the data. 1993, Honda Civic, lawnmower, asthma. When you are constructing a description, do not settle for the general category. Zoom in. Don't say, he was wearing a bad outfit. Say, he was wearing a neon tank top that looked like a crossing guard's vest.
The more specific the detail, the more real the image becomes in the listener's mind. And the harder the image hits, the faster they laugh. The self-deprecation shield. Self-deprecation is a high-risk, high-reward mechanic. Used correctly, it makes you invincible. Used incorrectly, it makes you pathetic. The mechanic works because it signals high status. Only a person who is truly confident can afford to mock themselves. If a king mocks his own crown, he is charming. If a beggar mocks his own rags, he is sad. The rule of self-deprecation is, mock your traits, not your value. You can mock your height, your baldness, your addiction to coffee, or your bad sense of direction. These are traits. Do not mock your competence, your worthiness of love, or your intelligence. That lowers your value. Good self-deprecation. I'm not saying I'm bad with technology, but I once got a virus on a toaster. Mocks a trait or skill. Bad self-deprecation. I'm such a loser. I don't know why anyone hires me. Mocks value. Use self-deprecation to seize the elephant in the room. If you have a stain on your shirt, point it out before anyone else does. I decided to wear my lunch today. It's a bold fashion statement from Paris. By firing the bullet yourself, you take the gun away from everyone else. You control the narrative, the rhythm, and the pause. Finally, we must address the delivery mechanism, timing. A joke is a package. The words are the contents, but the timing is the delivery service. The most common mistake people make is stepping on their own punchline. They get excited. They rush the end of the sentence. They laugh while they are saying it. You must separate the setup from the punchline with a beat.
A beat is a micropause. It is a breath. It allows the listener's brain to process the setup so they are ready for the twist. I have the body of a god. Unfortunately, it's Buddha. If you rush that pause, I have the body of a god, unfortunately it's Buddha, the logic collapses. The listener doesn't have time to build the first image before you smash it with the second. Slow down. Trust the silence. The silence is where the tension builds. The punchline is just the pin that pops the balloon. The toolkit. You now possess the blueprints. Rule of 3, setup, setup, twist. Misdirection, lead them left, turn right. Call back. Close the loop. Irony. Agree and amplify. Specificity. Zoom in on the details. Self-deprecation. Mock the trait, not the value. The beat. Pause before the punch. These are not rigid laws, they are tools. You keep them in your back pocket. When you are in a conversation and you see an opening, you reach for the right tool. Oh, he's listing things. I'll use the rule of 3. Oh, she mentioned a weird detail earlier. I'll use a callback. At first, this will feel mechanical. You will feel like you are doing math in your head. That is normal. You are learning a new language. You have to conjugate the verbs manually before you can speak fluently. But with practice, the math fades. The algorithms become instincts. You stop seeing the blueprints and start seeing the art. You stop acting like an engineer and start acting like a magician. And that is when the world starts to wonder how you do it. Chapter 7. Killing the internal censor. There is a graveyard in your mind. It is filled with thousands of brilliant jokes, insightful comments, and perfect retorts that never saw the light of day. They lie there, buried and rotting, not because you couldn't think of them, but because you didn't say them. You thought of the line. It flashed across your consciousness for a split second, but then a shadow fell over it. A voice whispered, "Is that too mean? Is that weird? What if nobody laughs? What if I stutter? Better to stay quiet." And just like that, the thought was murdered. This is the tragedy of the internal censor. The reason you are slow is not because your brain is a slow generator. It is because your brain is an overzealous gatekeeper. You are driving with one foot on the gas and one foot slamming on the brake. If you want to think faster, if you want to speak with the velocity of a master, you do not need to learn how to generate more thoughts. You need to learn how to lower the gate. You need to kill the censor. The tyranny of the editor. Your brain has 2 distinct modes of operation regarding speech: the creator and the editor. The creator is the child. It is wild, associative, creative, and fast. It throws paint at the wall. It sees a bald man and thinks bowling ball. It sees a chaotic meeting and thinks zoo. The creator is the source of all your wit. The editor is the adult. It is the parent. It is responsible, cautious, and socially paranoid. It scans every output from the creator and holds it against the checklist of social safety. Is this polite? Is this accurate? Is this safe? In a socially anxious person, the editor is a tyrant.
It rejects 90% of what the creator suggests. It demands multiple revisions before a sentence is allowed to leave your mouth. This process, draft, edit, reject, redraft, edit, approve, takes time. It takes seconds, and as we have established, in conversation, seconds are fatal. To speak fast, you must stage a coup. You must strip the editor of its power. You must realize that in casual conversation, safety is not the priority. Connection is the priority, and connection requires risk, the spotlight effect. Why is your editor so loud? Because you are suffering from a psychological delusion known as the spotlight effect. You believe that you are the main character in the movie of life. You believe that everyone is watching you with high-definition scrutiny. You believe that if you say something slightly awkward or if a joke falls flat, it will be a catastrophic event. You imagine people talking about your failure for days. Here's the liberating truth. Nobody cares about you. Everyone else is the main character in their own movie. They are worried about their own lines, their own appearance, and their own insecurities. They are not judging your performance, they are worrying about their own. If you make a joke and it doesn't land, nobody marks it down in a permanent record. They forget it 3 seconds later. The social penalty for a bad comment is almost zero, but the social reward for a great comment is massive. The math favors the bold. If you take 10 risks and 3 of them land, you are remembered as the funny, charismatic guy. The 7 misses are edited out of people's memories. History is written by the victors, and social memory is written by the hits, not the misses.
Once you realize that the audience is not a firing squad, but a group of distracted, self-absorbed individuals, the fear evaporates. The editor goes to sleep.
The 80% rule. Perfectionism is the enemy of speed. Your editor wants the joke to be 100% perfect. It wants the grammar to be impeccable, the timing to be precise, and the logic to be flawless. While you are waiting for 100%, the moment passes. You must adopt the 80% rule. If a thought is 80% good, release it. Fire. Do not wait to polish it. Do not wait to verify it. An 80% joke delivered with 100% confidence and 0% latency is infinitely better than a 100% joke delivered 5 seconds too late. Wit is a volume game. The wittiest people you know, the ones who seem to have a quip for everything, are not batting 1,000. They are just swinging at every pitch. They are comfortable with the good enough response. When you lower your standard for what is sayable, you increase the flow of data. You unclog the pipe. Suddenly, you are not searching for the perfect diamond, you are throwing rocks. And often, a rock hits the target just as hard. The filter of nice. One of the thickest walls in your mental prison is the desire to be nice. We are socialized to be polite, agreeable, and non-confrontational. But wit, by its very nature, is often sharp. It requires a little bit of edge. It requires a little bit of teasing, a little bit of darkness, a little bit of truth. If your filter is set to Disney princess, you will never be witty. You will be pleasant. You will be forgettable. You must recalibrate your filter from nice to authentic. Authenticity allows for friction.
It allows you to call out the elephant in the room. It allows you to make fun of a friend, which paradoxically brings you closer. The fear is that if you are not nice, people will hate you. The reality is that people crave authenticity. They are bored by constant politeness. They trust the person who is willing to say the thing that is slightly wrong because it feels real. This doesn't mean you should be a jerk. There is a line between wit and cruelty. But most people are so far away from that line, they are so safe, that they could travel a mile toward edgy and still be perfectly likable. Test the waters. Say the thing that feels 10% too risky. You will be surprised to find that instead of being offended, people lean in. They laugh. They feel relieved that someone finally dropped the mask. The art of the save. The biggest fear of the internal censor is the bomb, the silence after a bad joke, the awkward stare. But here's a secret of the masters. The bomb is an opportunity. If you make a joke and nobody laughs, you have not failed. You have simply created a new moment, a moment of tension. And as we know, tension is the fuel of comedy. The save is often funnier than the original joke. If you say something and it lands with a thud, do not retreat, do not look down, do not apologize. Address the failure immediately. Wow, that sounded much better in my head. I'm going to fire my writers. I'd like to request a moment of silence for that joke. It died a tragic death. Tough crowd. Is everyone here a judge on American Idol? By calling out the failure, you demonstrate supreme confidence. You show that you are not rattled by a little silence. You detach your ego from the result. When you realize that you can recover from anything, that there is no such thing as a fatal conversation error, the editor loses its power. If you have a parachute, you are not afraid to jump. The save is your parachute. Learn it, keep it ready, and then jump. Radical acceptance of the impulse. To think fast, you must practice radical acceptance of the impulse. This is a drill you can do in low-stakes environments. When a thought pops into your head, say it. Immediately, do not check it. If you are walking with a friend and you see a strange dog and your brain thinks, mop, say, that dog looks like a mop. Do not think, is that funny? Is it clever? Just say it. You are training the neural pathway between thought and speech. Right now, that pathway is blocked by a customs checkpoint. You want to tear down the checkpoint and build a superhighway. The more you practice bypassing the checkpoint, the more you will trust your creator brain. You will learn that your instincts are actually quite good. Your subconscious mind is faster, smarter, and funnier than your conscious mind. It has access to your entire database of memories and associations. Trust the machine. Stop trying to drive it manually.
The frame of the jester. In medieval courts, the jester was the only person allowed to tell the truth to the king. He could mock the king, question his decisions, and point out the absurdity of the court, as long as he did it with a smile.
To kill the censor, you must adopt the frame of the jester. When you enter a conversation, tell yourself, I am here to play. I am here to find the fun. I am not here to write a legal contract. When you view conversation as play, the stakes drop. You are just batting a ball back and forth. If you drop the ball, you pick it up and keep playing. There is no judgment in play. This is why the most charismatic people often have a twinkle in their eye. That twinkle is the signal of the jester. It says, I don't take this or myself too seriously. When you stop taking yourself seriously, the censor dissolves. The censor only exists to protect your ego. If you remove the ego, if you are willing to be silly, to be wrong, to be absurd, the censor has nothing to protect. Technique: the nonsense drill. Here is a practical exercise to break the habit of filtering. It is called the nonsense drill. Find a partner or use a voice recorder. Your goal is to speak for 1 minute straight without stopping. The rule is, you cannot make sense. The purple elephant drove the submarine to the cloud festival because the toaster was feeling anxious about the stock market. If you pause to think, you lose. If you try to make a logical sentence, you lose. This forces you to disengage the logic/editor brain and rely entirely on the associative creator brain. It feels uncomfortable at first. Your brain screams for order, but after a few attempts, you enter a flow state. Words just tumble out. This is the feeling of pure, unfiltered generation. This is the speed you are capable of.
Once you know you can generate words this fast, you can slowly reintroduce a tiny bit of logic, just enough to make sense, while keeping the speed of the nonsense flow. The definition of audacity. Ultimately, thinking faster is an act of courage. It is the courage to impose your reality on the room. It is the courage to trust your own mind more than you fear the judgment of others. The word audacity comes from the Latin audere, meaning to dare. You must dare to speak. You must dare to interrupt the silence. You must dare to be the one who changes the energy of the room. The slow thinker waits for permission. They wait for the perfect opening. They wait for certainty. The fast thinker takes the opening. They create the certainty. Kill the censor. Bury the editor. Your mind is sharp enough. Your instincts are fast enough. The only thing standing in your way is the hesitation that you put there. Remove the hesitation, and you will find that the wit was waiting for you all along. Chapter 8. Verbal Combat and Defense. It is easy to be witty when the stakes are low. It is easy to crack a joke when you are sitting with your friends, nursing a drink, surrounded by warmth and approval. In that environment, your brain feels safe. The chemicals of creativity flow freely. You're a genius. But what happens when the temperature rises? What happens when a client questions your integrity? What happens when a negotiation turns hostile? What happens when someone insults you in front of a crowd? For most people, the sharp mind instantly dulls. The stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, flood the system. The prefrontal cortex shuts down. You revert to a primitive state.
You either lash out with clumsy anger or you crumble into submission. Later, 3 hours after the fight is over, you think of the perfect comeback. You think of the perfect argument that would have destroyed them. But it's too late. You lost. This chapter is about verbal combat. But let us be clear. Combat is not about aggression. Aggression is sloppy. Aggression is slow. True combat is about economy of motion. It is about maintaining your composure while the other person loses theirs. It is about using the minimum amount of force to achieve the maximum amount of impact. To think fast under pressure,
You must stop trying to win the argument and start trying to control the dynamic. The first rule: never defend. If you memorize only one rule from this entire audiobook, let it be this: if you are defending, you are losing. When someone attacks you verbally, "Why is this project so late?" or "You don't know what you're talking about," your instinct is to explain. Your instinct is to provide facts, to justify your actions, to plead your case. "Well, actually, we're late because the vendor didn't send the files and I tried to call them." Stop. You have already lost. By explaining, you are validating their frame. You are accepting the role of the accused and granting them the role of the judge. You are digging a hole. The more you talk, the deeper the hole gets. The fast thinker never defends. The fast thinker pivots. Instead of answering the accusation, you address the context of the accusation. You answer a question with a question. You shift the burden of proof back onto them. Attacker: "Why is this project so late?" Defender: "Slow. It's late because—" "I'm surprised you're asking that, given the vendor delays we discussed last week. Did you not get my email? Do you see the shift?" Suddenly, they are not the judge. They are the ones who missed an email. They are the ones who have to explain themselves. You have taken the ball from your court and thrown it into theirs. This is not about dodging responsibility. It is about refusing to be interrogated. In a high-pressure environment, the person who is answering the questions is the person with the lowest status. Stop answering. Start asking. The art of frame control. Every conversation takes place inside a frame. The frame is the unstated context of the interaction. It dictates who is in charge, who is seeking approval, and what the rules are. The authority frame: I am the boss, you are the employee. The moral frame: I am right, you are wrong. The need frame: I need something from you, so I will be nice. Most people unconsciously walk into other people's frames. If a car salesman uses a time pressure frame, "This deal ends in 10 minutes, most people panic and try to speed up. They obey the frame. The sharp mind shatters the frame. When you feel pressure, pause. Ask yourself, what game are they playing and how do I break the rules? If someone tries to rush you, slow down. Physically move slower. Speak slower. Them: I need an answer right now. You: if you need an answer right now, it's going to be no. If you want a yes, I need 20 minutes. Your choice. You have broken their time pressure frame and replaced it with your choice frame.
If someone tries to use a moral superiority frame, "I can't believe you would be so selfish," do not apologize. Reframe the behavior. Them: you are being selfish. You: I am being protective of my time. There is a difference, and I think you know that. You must be vigilant. Do not let people define the reality of the conversation. The moment you accept their definition, you are fighting on their terrain. And if you fight on their terrain, they will win. Verbal judo: using their momentum. In judo, you do not block a punch. You pull the attacker forward so they fall over their own feet. In verbal conflict, you use agreement to destabilize the opponent. When someone insults you or attacks your idea, they are expecting resistance. They are leaning forward, ready to push against your no. If you suddenly give them a yes, they lose their balance. Attacker: your proposal is ridiculous. It's way too expensive. Resistance: slow. It's not ridiculous. It's actually very cost-effective because crash. Force against force. Judo: fast. You're right. It is expensive. It's arguably the most expensive option on the table. Pause. And that's exactly why it's the only one that will work. By agreeing with the attack, it is expensive, you disarm them. You took away their weapon. They can't keep arguing that it's expensive because you just admitted it. Now they have to listen to why it's worth it. This technique is called stealing the thunder. If you know someone has a specific complaint, say it before they do. I know you're going to say I'm inexperienced. You're right. I don't have 20 years in this industry, and that means I don't have 20 years of bad habits to unlearn. You took the bullet out of their gun and fired it yourself. Now they have nothing to shoot you with. The fogging technique. What about pure insults? What about when someone is just trying to hurt you? The slow thinker gets angry. The slow thinker gets emotional. The fast thinker uses fogging.
Imagine throwing a rock into a fog bank. What happens? Nothing. The rock passes through, slows down, and disappears. There is no impact, there is no sound. When someone insults you, behave like fog. Do not deny the insult. Do not fight the insult. Simply acknowledge the possibility of truth in the insult and move on. Insulter. You are disorganized and messy. You, fogging. I can certainly be scattered sometimes. Insulter. You're an idiot. You, fogging. I've certainly had my moments. This is devastating to an aggressor. They want to fight. They want drama. By giving them a bland, non-defensive agreement, you deny them the dopamine hit of a conflict. You become boring to them. You are treating their insult not as an attack, but as a piece of data. You think I'm an idiot? Interesting hypothesis. I'll file that away. This requires a detachment of ego. You have to love your own peace of mind more than you love the need to be right. But if you could master this, you become invincible. You become a ghost. They can swing at you all day, but they will never hit anything solid. The Socratic trap. If you want to dismantle someone's argument without seeming aggressive, use the Socratic method. This involves asking a series of innocent-sounding questions that lead the opponent to a logical dead end. You do not tell them they are wrong. You let them discover they are wrong. Them, we need to fire the entire marketing team. Okay. If we fire them, who handles the launch next week? We'll hire an agency. How long does it usually take to onboard an agency? I don't know, maybe a month. So if the launch is in a week and the agency takes a month, what happens to the product? We missed the launch. You never argued. You never raised your voice. You just asked questions until the trap snapped shut. To think fast in this mode, you need to think 2 moves ahead. If I ask X, they will say Y. If they say Y, I will ask Z. This is the lawyer mindset. Never ask a question you don't know the answer to. Lead them down the garden path and let them walk off the cliff themselves. Labeling the emotion. High-pressure situations are fueled by unacknowledged emotion. When someone is screaming at you, they are usually screaming because they feel unheard or disrespected. The fastest way to de-escalate, or to gain the upper hand, is to label the emotion. This is a technique from FBI hostage negotiation. You look at the person and you verbally identify what they are feeling. It sounds like you're incredibly frustrated with this timeline. It seems like you feel we haven't been listening to you. You sound worried that this is going to fail. Note the phrasing. It sounds like, or it seems like. Do not say, you are angry. That is an accusation. It sounds like you are angry is an observation. When you label the emotion, 2 things happen. Validation. The other person feels understood. Their amygdala, fear center, calms down. They stop screaming. Control. By naming the demon, you tame the demon. You are showing that you are not afraid of their anger. You are analyzing it. You are the doctor. They are the patient. This flips the dynamic. The person losing their temper is the child. The person calmly labeling the temper is the adult. The power of the non sequitur. Sometimes the best defense is pure confusion. If you are cornered and you cannot win with logic and you cannot win with judo, you can win with chaos. Throw a non sequitur, a statement that does not follow logically, into the gears of the argument. Attacker. You are incompetent and this report is garbage. You know, that reminds me of a fascinating article I read about deep-sea jellyfish. Did you know they have no brains but still survive? The attacker stops. Their brain freezes. What? Jellyfish? What are you talking about? In that moment of confusion, that pattern interrupt, the loop is broken. The anger is derailed. They are forced to shift from attack mode to confusion mode. While they are confused, you can change the subject, leave the room, or reset the frame. Anyway, the point is, nature is resilient, and so is this project. Let's look at page 4. It is a bold move. It requires audacity.
But it works because it refuses to play by the rules of a standard argument. It signals that you are so unbothered by their attack that you are thinking about marine biology. The pocket veto. Silence. We return again to silence, but in combat, silence is a weapon.
When someone asks you a manipulative question or makes a rude comment, do not answer. Look them in the eye. Count to 4. That 4 seconds of silence is excruciating for them. They will wonder, did he hear me? Is he mad? Did I go too far? Is he judging me? Usually, they will break. They will start talking again to fill the void. They will backpedal. Them, I just think this idea is stupid. You stare at them for 4 seconds. Them, I mean, not stupid, just maybe we need to refine it. You won the argument without saying a word. You used the weight of their own anxiety against them. Silence is the loudest sound in the universe. Learn to endure it longer than they can. The exit strategy. Finally, you must know how to leave. The slow thinker stays in the fight too long. They get dragged into the mud, they keep arguing in circles because they want the last word. The fast thinker knows when the return on investment, ROI, of the conversation has turned negative. When the argument is no longer productive, when it has become circular or abusive, you must execute a hard break. Do not ask for permission to leave. Declare the end. I can see we aren't going to agree on this today. I'm going to step out. Let's pick this up tomorrow when we're fresh. I'm not willing to have this conversation while you're shouting. When you're ready to talk calmly, I'll be at my desk. Then turn and walk away. Do not look back. Do not wait for their reaction. The physical act of walking away is the ultimate power move. It says, my time is more valuable than your tantrum.
The mindset of the stone. To execute any of these techniques, you must cultivate the mindset of the stone. A stone does not react to the wind. It does not react to the rain. It does not get offended if a dog barks at it. It simply is. When you are in a high-pressure situation, visualize yourself as a stone. Let the words wash over you. Do not let them penetrate your skin. The moment you get emotional, you have simple reflexes. You are easy to predict. You are easy to manipulate. When you are calm, you are complex. You are dangerous. Thinking fast in combat is not about speed of speech. It is about speed of regulation. It is about how fast you can detect your own anger and shut it down. If you can keep your heart rate at 60 beats per minute while everyone else is at 120, you will be the smartest person in the room. You will see the openings they miss. You will set the traps they walk into. You will not just win the argument, you will own the room. Chapter 9. The Rhythm of Charisma. You have sharpened your mind. You have killed the censor. You have learned the structures of wit and the defenses of verbal combat. You have the bullets in the gun, but a bullet is useless if the gun jams. This brings us to the most overlooked aspect of communication, delivery. You can have the most brilliant, insightful, devastatingly funny thought in the history of human conversation, but if you mumble it, rush it, or deliver it with a shaky voice, it will die. It will be ignored.
Conversely, you can say something completely mundane, but if you deliver it with perfect rhythm, deep resonance, and absolute conviction, people will hang on your every word. We have spent 8 chapters working on the software of your brain. Now we must work on the hardware of your voice. Thinking fast does not mean speaking fast. In fact, the fastest thinkers often speak the slowest. They operate on a different time signature than the rest of the anxious world. They do not scramble to keep up with the beat. They set the beat. In this chapter, we are going to master the music of speech. We are going to learn how to control tempo, pitch, volume, and silence to ensure that when you finally do speak, your words land with the weight of a sledgehammer. Speed versus haste. There is a profound difference between a fast car and a car that is out of control. Anxious people speak with haste. They feel the time pressure we discussed earlier. They believe that if they don't get the words out immediately, the other person will interrupt them or lose interest. So they sprint. They tumble over their words. They merge sentences together without breathing. This signals low status. It signals, I'm afraid you are going to stop listening to me, so I must cram everything in right now. Charismatic people speak with velocity, not haste. Velocity is controlled speed. It is efficient. It gets to the point quickly, but it does not rush the delivery. To appear sharper, you must paradoxically slow down your mouth. When you slow down, you give your brain a buffer. If your mouth is moving at 100 words per minute, but your brain is thinking at 120 words per minute, you have a surplus. You have time to look ahead, choose the perfect word, and pivot if necessary. But if your mouth is moving at 150 words per minute and your brain is only thinking at 120, you will crash, you will stutter, you will say and ah. Your mouth must never move faster than your mind. The power of chunking. Musicians do not play a symphony as one long, continuous note. They play phrases. They break the music down into digestible bars. You must learn to speak in chunks. A chunk is a single thought unit. It is a burst of information followed by a micropause. Bad phrasing, no chunks. I think we should go with the second option because it's cheaper and faster, and even though it has some risks, I think we can manage them effectively. This sounds breathless and frantic. Good phrasing, chunking. I think we should go with the second option, pause. It is cheaper, pause. It is faster, pause. And while there are risks, I know we can manage them. Notice the difference. The second version sounds authoritative. It sounds like a leader. Chunking does two things. Cognitive load. It makes it easier for the listener to process what you are saying. You are feeding them one bite at a time, rather than shoving the whole meal down their throat. Processing time. The micropauses between chunks give you time to think of the next chunk. You are literally buying yourself time to think faster, right in front of their faces. The downward influence. The commander's tone. One of the most common habits that destroys wit is upspeak. This is the habit of raising your pitch at the end of the sentence. It makes a statement sound like a question. I am an expert in this field. I am an expert in this field? When you use upspeak, you are subcommunicating. Do you agree with me? Is this okay? Please validate me. It kills the joke. It kills the insight. It turns a sword into a pool noodle. Wit requires certainty. Even if you were joking, you must deliver the joke as a fact. You must train yourself to use the downward inflection. At the end of the sentence, drop your pitch. Imagine you were putting a heavy period at the end of the line. Imagine a door slamming shut. That is not going to happen. Pitch goes down. This signals, I have spoken. The matter is settled. This is especially crucial for the punchlines we discussed in Chapter 6. If you deliver a punchline with upspeak, it sounds like you are asking permission to be funny. If you deliver it with a downward inflection, it sounds like a decree. Practice this. Record yourself. Say your name. My name is John. Weak. My name is John. Strong. The difference in pitch is subtle, but the difference in perception is massive. The whisper and the roar. Dynamics. A monotonous voice is a hypnotic voice. It puts people to sleep. To keep people engaged, you must use dynamics. You must vary your volume. Most people think that to be heard, they must be loud. But in a noisy room or a heated argument, loudness is just more noise. The most powerful volume is the stage whisper. When you lower your voice just slightly below the ambient noise level, you force people to lean in. You force them to focus. You signal that what you are about to say is a secret.
It is intimate. If you are delivering a cutting remark or a dry observation, do not shout it. Drop your volume. Loud. This meeting is a waste of time. Sounds like a complaint. Quiet. This meeting is a crime scene. Sounds like a judgment. Conversely, Use volume to emphasize the key word. If you are using a metaphor, hit the metaphor hard. He is not just a manager, he is an arsonist. Punch the word arsonist. Make it ring. This is called landing the word. If you swallow the key word, the wit evaporates. Articulation, the crispness of thought. Lazy thinkers have lazy lips. They slur their words. Going to becomes gonna. Probably becomes probably. Interesting becomes interesting. This mush-mouth delivery implies a mushy mind. Sharp thoughts require sharp diction. You want your words to sound like they are being cut with a knife. You want the consonants to pop. T's, K's, P's, and B's. These are the percussive sounds of language. Use them. When you articulate clearly, you unconsciously slow down. You cannot mumble fast. You can only articulate at a controlled pace. This forces you into the commander's rhythm. It also adds a layer of intelligence to your persona. People who speak crisply are perceived as having higher IQs. It signals that you respect language enough to use it correctly. Eye contact as punctuation. Your voice is not the only instrument. Your eyes are the conductor. Most people look away when they are thinking. They look at the ceiling, the floor, or their hands. This breaks the connection. The fast thinker learns to think on contact. This means maintaining eye contact while you are processing the data. This is incredibly difficult at first. It feels intense.
But it is the secret to appearing quicker than you are. When you hold eye contact during a silence, you are not blanking out. You are staring them down. Use your eyes to punctuate the rhythm. The setup, look at them intensely. The pause, hold the gaze, do not blink. The punchline, deliver it. The release, only after the line lands, break eye contact and smile or don't. If you look away before the punchline, you rob it of its power. You look like you are fleeing the scene of the crime before you've even committed it. The body language of stillness. Nervous energy leaks out of the body. It manifests as foot tapping, pen clicking, hair twirling, and shifting weight from foot to foot. This visual noise distracts the listener. It creates static. If you want your wit to land, you must become a statue. Stillness is volume. The less you move your body, the more your words matter. Watch a stand-up comedian. When they are about to deliver the killer line, they stop walking. They plant their feet. They stop moving their hands. They force the audience to focus entirely on the mouth. If you are flailing your arms while trying to be witty, you look like a court jester. If you are perfectly still while being witty, you look like a king. Drill, the poetry protocol. How do you practice rhythm? You cannot practice it in normal conversation because the stakes are too high. You need a simulator. The best simulator is poetry, specifically classic poetry or Shakespearean monologues. Why? Because poetry has a built-in meter. It has a rhythm that you must follow. Take a poem, read it aloud, practice the pauses, practice the downward inflection, practice landing the rhyming words.
Practice chunking the lines. Do not read it to understand it. Read it to feel the beat. Once you get the feel of iambic pentameter or the rhythm of a great speech, try to transfer that musicality to your daily speech. When you order coffee, do not just say it, perform it. I would like a black coffee, large. Downward inflection. Treat every sentence as a rehearsal. The stop and reset. What happens when you stumble? What happens when you trip over your words or start speaking too fast? The amateur tries to speed up to hide the mistake. The professional stops. If you feel yourself rushing or if you stutter, execute a hard stop. Stop talking completely. Take a deep breath. Reset your posture. Look the person in the eye and start the sentence again slower. Let me rephrase that. This is a power move. It shows that you are in control of the mechanism. You are not afraid to edit yourself in real time. You respect your own ideas enough to ensure they are delivered correctly. Never be afraid to restart. A clean second take is always better than a messy first take. Chapter 10. The Infinite Game of Intellect. We have reached the end of the technical manual. We have dissected the biology of your brain. We have cleared the fog of distraction. We have stocked the warehouse with knowledge, learned to listen like a predator, and mastered the geometry of the joke. You now possess the tools to dismantle an argument, control a frame, and deliver a line with the rhythm of a king. But tools are inanimate objects. A hammer cannot build a house by itself. A sword cannot fight a war on its own.
The effectiveness of the tool depends entirely on the hand that holds it, and the hand that holds it must be calloused. It must be strong. It must be disciplined. Many people who start this journey treat wit as a destination. They think, once I learn these tricks, I will be smart forever. They treat it like a college degree, something you earn once and hang on the wall. This is a fatal error. A sharp mind is not a diploma. It is a muscle. And like any muscle, it operates under a ruthless biological law. Use it or lose it. If you stop training, you will atrophy. If you stop pushing the boundaries of your associative memory, the neural pathways we have built will degrade. The weeds will grow back over the tracks. The fog will return. This final chapter is not about a new technique. It is about sustainability. It is about the transition from doing to being. It is about how to take the skills you have learned and weave them into the very fabric of your identity, ensuring that you do not just peak today, but continue to accelerate for the rest of your life. The myth of cognitive decline. There is a pervasive story in our culture that says your brain peaks at 25 and then it is a slow slide into senility. We are told that as we age, we become slower, forgetful, and rigid. We are told that thinking fast is a young person's game. This is a half-truth that has become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It is true that fluid intelligence, raw processing speed, can decline slightly with age, but crystallized intelligence, the accumulation of knowledge, patterns, and vocabulary, increases. The reason most adults become slower thinkers is not biology. It is complacency.
When you are young, your brain is on fire. You are learning a new language, navigating complex social hierarchies in school, learning a trade, and experiencing new things every day. Your brain is forced to adapt. Then, you hit your 30s. You get a steady job, you get a routine. You talk to the same 5 people. You drive the same route to work. You watch the same type of TV shows. Your brain realizes, I've mastered this environment. I no longer need to burn energy building new pathways. So, it goes into power-saving mode. It calcifies. The adults who stay sharp, the ones who are still witty and dangerous at 70, are the ones who refused to settle. They refused the routine. They kept the curiosity engine from Chapter 3 running at full throttle. If you want to play the infinite game, you must declare war on comfort. You must wake up every morning and demand that your brain solve a new problem. Neuroplasticity and the permanent shift. The scientific term for what we are doing is neuroplasticity. It is the brain's ability to rewire itself based on input. Every time you practice the yes and technique, you are physically coating a neural wire with myelin. Myelin is insulation. The thicker the myelin, the faster the electrical signal travels. At first, using a metaphor feels clunky. The signal leaks. The connection is slow. After 100 repetitions, the myelin is thick. The signal flies at 200 miles per hour. After 1,000 repetitions, the signal is instantaneous. This is the shift from conscious competence to unconscious competence. Right now, you are likely in the stage of conscious competence. You have to think about being witty. You have to remind yourself to listen aggressively.
You have to remind yourself to drop your voice at the end of a sentence. This is exhausting, but it is temporary. if you persist, if you force yourself to use these tools every single day for the next 6 months, you will cross the threshold. One day, someone will say something to you, and you will snap back with a perfect, witty retort without even realizing you did it. You will surprise yourself. That is the moment of victory. That is when the software has been hard-coded into the hardware. You are no longer trying to be witty. You are witty. The theory of the tennis partner. There is an old saying in sports: if you want to get better at tennis, play against someone who is better than you. If you play against someone worse than you can win by playing sloppy. You don't need to run fast. You don't need to strategize. You can be lazy and still dominate. If you play against someone better than you are forced to rise. Your brain has to work at maximum capacity just to survive the point. The same applies to conversation. Audit your social circle. Who are you talking to every day? Are you surrounded by passive listeners who just wait for their turn to speak? Are you surrounded by people who speak in cliches, who never challenge your ideas, who agree with everything you say? If so, you are playing tennis with a wall. You will never get faster. You need to find your sparring partners. You need people who are sharper than you, people who challenge your premises, people who use vocabulary you have to look up, people who are not afraid to roast you. This can be uncomfortable. It is humbling to be the slowest person in the room, but that humility is the furnace of growth. If you cannot find these people in your immediate circle, find them elsewhere. Join a debate club. Join a Toastmasters group. Go to industry conferences where the leaders gather. Listen to podcasts hosted by brilliant minds. Allow their cadence and their logic to seep into your brain by osmosis. You become the average of the 5 minds you engage with most. Choose them carefully. The game film review protocol. Professional athletes watch game film. They sit down after the match and watch the recording. They analyze every play. Why did I miss that tackle? Why did I swing at that bad pitch? They do not do this to shame themselves. They do it to calibrate their instincts. You must start watching your own game film. Every night, before you go to sleep, replay the day's conversations. Pick one interaction that didn't go well. Maybe you froze. Maybe you gave a boring answer. Maybe you got defensive. Replay it, but this time, rewrite the script. Ask yourself, what should I have said? Use the tools. I missed the feed. He gave me a metaphor about a sinking ship, and I ignored it. I should have used a yes and regarding the Titanic. I got defensive when she asked about the timeline. I should have used the pivot. Visualize yourself saying the correct line. Hear it in your head. Feel the rhythm. This practice is powerful because the brain struggles to distinguish between vivid visualization and actual experience. By replaying the conversation correctly, you are retroactively training your brain. You're telling your neurons, next time, do this.
If you do this every night, you effectively double your social experience. You learn from your mistakes without having to make them twice. The danger of the plateau. As you improve, you will hit a plateau. You will become the funny guy in your office. You will be the person who can handle a meeting with ease. This is the danger zone. When you are good enough to get by, the urge to improve vanishes. You stop reading, you stop analyzing, you coast. But the world is constantly accelerating. Culture changes, slang changes, the geopolitical landscape changes. If you stand still, you are actually moving backward relative to the world. To avoid the plateau, you must constantly inject novelty. We discussed the high-low mix in Chapter 3. You must keep mixing it. If you have spent the last year reading history, switch to science fiction. If you have mastered the art of sarcasm, try to master the art of sincere, inspirational storytelling. If you are great at talking to peers, try talking to children. Children are the ultimate lateral thinkers. They will test your improv skills more than any CEO. Treat your mind like a crop field.
You must rotate the crops to keep the soil fertile. Never let one mode of thinking exhaust your resources. Wit as a weapon for good. Throughout this book, we have used martial metaphors. We have talked about weapons, combat, predators, and ammunition. We have framed wit as a tool for survival and dominance. And it is. But as you reach the level of mastery, your motivation must shift. If you use your sharp mind only to humiliate others, to win arguments, and to show off, you will end up lonely. You will be admired, perhaps, but you will not be liked.
You will be a gladiator in an empty arena. The highest form of wit is not destruction, it is elevation. A master uses their speed to lift the energy of the room. They use their humor to diffuse tension, not create it. They use their articulation to clarify confusing ideas, not to obscure them with jargon. They use their listening skills to make others feel seen, not to hunt for weaknesses. Think of the most charismatic people in history. They didn't just make you think they were smart, they made you feel smart. When you are truly fast, you can slow down enough to bring others with you. You can set the alley-oop so someone else can slam dunk. You can feed the line to the shy person in the corner so they can get the laugh. This is the transition from the jester to the sage. The jester mocks the king. The sage advises the king. The jester wants attention. The sage wants impact. Your goal should be to become the person who transforms the room just by entering it. The person who brings clarity to chaos. The person whose very presence signals that the standard of conversation has just been raised. The legacy of the sharp mind. We live in a noisy, messy, chaotic world. We are drowning in bad information, bad arguments, and boring conversations. By committing to this path, you are performing a service. You are becoming a beacon of clarity. When you speak clearly, you force others to listen. When you think logically, you force others to make sense. When you joke brilliantly, you give others the gift of joy. You are creating a ripple effect. Your children will learn to speak by listening to you.
Your team will learn to negotiate by watching you. Your friends will become sharper just by trying to keep up with you. This is the infinite game. There is no finish line. There is no trophy. There is only the endless, joyous pursuit of a better thought, a sharper sentence, and a deeper connection. The audiobook is ending. The silence is about to return. In a moment, you will take off your headphones. You will step back into the real world. You will walk into a room or pick up the phone or sit down at a dinner table, and someone will say something. The clock will start ticking. 1 second. 2 seconds. You will feel that familiar urge to freeze. You will feel the sensor rising to shut you down. You will feel the static of the day trying to cloud your mind. But this time, you know what to do. You will breathe. You will look them in the eye. You will clear the mechanism. You will listen to the subtext. You will make the connection, and you will speak. Do not hesitate. The world is waiting to hear what you have to say. Think fast, speak well, and never, ever let the moment pass you by.